The tariff war between the United States and China has reached an unprecedented crescendo in April 2025, marking a pivotal moment in global economic history. On April 9, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump announced a dramatic escalation, raising tariffs on Chinese goods to an eye-watering 125%, effective immediately, while simultaneously pausing his recently imposed reciprocal tariffs on dozens of other countries for 90 days. This pause reduces tariffs on most U.S. trading partners to a uniform 10% baseline rate, a sharp retreat from the higher rates unveiled during his Liberation Day announcement the previous week. Meanwhile, China retaliated swiftly, increasing its tariffs on U.S. imports from 34% to 84%, effective April 10, with hints that it could climb to 105% if Trump's latest hike persists. These astronomical tariff levels signal a full-blown showdown between the world's two largest economies, a conflict that has been simmering for nearly a decade across various domains: trade, technology, finance, and geopolitics. This video examines the origins, developments, and far-reaching consequences of this tariff war, arguing that it represents a critical juncture that could redefine global leadership and irreversibly damage the U.S. economy, regardless of whether Trump maintains or lifts these tariffs. Before I go further, we need your support to continue bringing you the latest news, analysis, and live information. Please give us your support, smash the like button, comment, share, and subscribe to all. In 2023, I wrote a book called China 2023. The epic of global dominance, about China achieving global dominance in 2023. That's right, China already achieved global dominance. It already happened. My book is an unbiased analysis of how it happened, the history of China's reemergence in the short span of the past 40 years. My book also predicted China's rapid high-tech revolution, Russia winning the Ukraine war, the decoupling of the world into two camps of the global South and the West, the prospering of global South countries, and the economic downturn of the US and the West. The goal of China is to bring prosperity and harmony to the world. All my predictions have become reality. This power shift has deep and far-reaching impacts on the future of humanity. My book has accurately predicted the most important changes in human history and the world going forward. Please click the links below to view my book and purchase. We need your support to continue. Back to the subject of today's episode. This tariff war and the grand showdown we are witnessing now, and as I predicted in my book, has the roots traced back to Trump's first term 2017-2021, when he launched an aggressive campaign to address what he perceived as unfair trade practices by China. In 2018, he imposed tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese goods, targeting sectors like steel, aluminum, and consumer electronics, citing national security concerns and a desire to reduce the U.S. trade deficit. China retaliated with tariffs on $110 billion of U.S. goods, including agricultural products like soybeans and pork, hitting Trump's political base in rural America. This tit-for-tat escalation set the stage for a prolonged economic conflict, punctuated by temporary truces like the 2020 Phase 1 trade deal, which saw China pledge to purchase more U.S. goods but failed to resolve underlying tensions. Upon returning to the presidency in 2025, Trump doubled down on his protectionist agenda. His Liberation Day announcement on April 2 introduced sweeping reciprocal tariffs, including a 10% baseline rate on all imports and higher duties up to 50% on countries deemed worst offenders in trade imbalances. China faced an initial 34% hike atop existing 20% tariffs, bringing the total to 54%. Beijing responded with a matching 34% tariff on U.S. goods, effective April 10. Trump then threatened an additional 50% increase if China did not back down, pushing the rate to 104% on April 8. China's defiance, raising its tariffs to 84%, prompted Trump's latest move to 125%, cementing this as the most severe trade war in modern history. The 90-day pause on reciprocal tariffs for over 75 countries, announced by a Truth Social on April 9, was framed as a strategic pivot. Trump noted that these nations had reached out to negotiate a solution and refrained from retaliation, justifying the reduction to a 10% baseline. China, however, was excluded, signaling a deliberate focus on isolating Beijing in this economic showdown. The immediate economic consequences of these tariffs are dire, particularly for the United States. At 125%, the tariff on Chinese goods effectively halts bilateral trade, which totaled $438.9 billion in U.S. imports from China in 2024 alone. China supplies critical goods, electronics, pharmaceuticals, clothing, and rare earth minerals that lack immediate substitutes in the U.S. market. American consumers, already strained by years of inflation, now face steep price increases as retailers like Target and Best Buy warn of passing on costs. Analysts estimate a $1,000 to $1,300 annual cost increase per household, depending on the goods affected, such as a high-end iPhone potentially reaching $2,300. The 90-day pause exacerbates this crisis. U.S. importers, anticipating that tariffs on China might be lifted, are delaying shipments to avoid the current 125% rate. This hesitation creates a supply vacuum, as goods from China, 80% of U.S. imports by some estimates, dwindle without replenishment. Meanwhile, exporters from other countries, now subject to the 10% baseline tariff, are reluctant to ramp up production or take U.S. orders. They fear that reciprocal tariffs could return after the pause, rendering investments unprofitable. Manufacturers contemplating relocating production to the U.S., a key Trump goal, are also holding back, expecting tariff relief that would negate the need for such moves. This uncertainty paralyzes the supply chain, threatening shortages of essentials like medical equipment, semiconductors, and consumer goods within weeks. China, while not immune, is better positioned. Over the past 7 years, it has diversified its export markets, boosting trade with BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and Global South nations. In 2024, China's exports to these regions grew by 15%, offsetting a 5% decline in U.S.-bound shipments. Substitutes for U.S. goods, wheat from Russia, soybeans from Brazil, have reduced China's reliance on American suppliers. The U.S., conversely, lacks viable alternatives for China's vast manufacturing output, leaving its economy vulnerable to sustained disruption. Trump's 90-day pause, intended as a negotiation window, offers little relief. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has touted it as a chance for bespoke deals with countries like Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam, which have expressed willingness to talk. However, the pause does not address the China-specific tariffs, the core of the crisis. U.S. importers' reluctance to act during this period ensures that supply shortages will worsen, not improve. Retail stocks. Wayfair, Levi Strauss spiked briefly on April 9 after the pause was announced, reflecting market relief, but economists warned this is a short-term blip. The S&P 500's 9.5% surge on April 9 masks a deeper $6 trillion loss over the prior week, signaling persistent instability. For manufacturers, the pause introduces a catch-22. Investing in U.S.-based production risks losses if tariffs are lifted, restoring China's competitiveness. Yet, failing to invest leaves the U.S. without domestic capacity when supplies run dry. Trump's hope of revitalizing American manufacturing is thus undermined by his own policy's volatility, contradicting his Make America Great Again ethos. This tariff war transcends economics, embodying a struggle for global supremacy. For Trump, backing down now would signal U.S. capitulation, ceding its centuries-long dominance to China. The Liberation Day tariffs were a bold assertion of American power, but their partial reversal except against China reveals fragility. Allies like Japan and the EU, initially hit with 24% and 20% tariffs, respectively, welcomed the pause but remain wary of U.S. reliability. Canada and Mexico, exempted from the baseline hike but still under 25% USMCA-related duties, signal frustration with retaliatory measures looming. China, by contrast, projects defiance and resilience. Its swift 84% tariff hike and threats of 105% underscore a refusal to yield. A striking move came on April 8, when the Chinese government directed state-owned conglomerates to prop up its stock market, reversing a day of losses after Trump's initial tariff salvo. The Shanghai Composite Index rebounded 5% on April 9, a stark contrast to the US's volatile markets. This intervention, a first for Beijing, signals a muscular response to the showdown, leveraging its command economy to weather the storm. China's preparedness extends beyond finance. Since 2018, it has reduced reliance on U.S. exports from 19% to 14% of its total, per 2024 data, while developing self-sufficiency in critical areas. The digital yuan bypasses SWIFT, shielding China from U.S. financial sanctions. The Beidou satellite system rivals GPS, enhancing autonomy. In technology, China's chip industry, though lagging in cutting-edge nodes, now meets domestic needs, bolstered by export controls on rare earths. 90% of the global supply crucial for U.S. military and tech sectors. China's military advancements amplify its leverage. Hypersonic missiles, stealth fighter jets like the J-20, and a growing naval fleet including 3 operational aircraft carriers rival U.S. capabilities. The U.S. Navy, plagued by maintenance delays and accidents, for example, the 2024 USS Boxer Fire, struggles to project power as it once did. China's rare earth export curbs, tightened in April 2025, threaten U.S. defense production, from F-35 jets to missile systems. In a weaker adversary, such economic aggression might provoke U.S. military action. Recall the Opium Wars or Iraq invasions. Against China, however, this is untenable, a rare silver lining preventing a hot war. Whether Trump maintains or lifts the tariffs, the U.S. is cornered. If he persists, trade with China halts, triggering shortages, inflation, and industrial turmoil. Goldman Sachs raised its U.S. recession odds to 45% on April 7, reflecting market fears. Stagnation could fuel unrest, with states like Texas and California long mulling independence potentially exploiting economic chaos to break away. The U.S. dollar, already weakened by tariff-induced market sell-offs, risks losing reserve currency status as BRICS nations pivot to alternatives. If Trump relents, supplies might resume, but the damage to U.S. credibility is permanent. The U.S. economy, scarred by a week of market chaos and supply delays, faces a slow recovery, and even a depression, its global leadership diminished. Allies, burned by tariff whiplash, losing confidence in the U.S. and the democracy ideology, will seek alternatives. China as a stable trade partner, huge market and technology supplier, will be the attractive alternative partner to EU. This cooperation window for EU and China is made possible by Trump's miscalculated tariff policies. China's trajectory suggests it is poised to emerge victorious. Its economic diversification, military might, and strategic resilience honed over 7 years of trade tensions equip it to outlast the U.S. The tariff war, dubbed stupid by critics, exposes U.S. miscalculation. Trump's bluff, if it is won, has backfired, alienating allies and disrupting supply chains without bending China. Beijing's defiance, backed by tangible actions, positions it as the new global leader, a shift the U.S. may never reverse. In conclusion, the U.S.-China tariff war of 2025 is a grand showdown with no winners, only degrees of loss. For the U.S., it risks economic collapse, geopolitical isolation, and the end of its empire. For China, it is a test of endurance it appears ready to pass. As supplies dwindle and tensions mount, the world watches a historic transfer of power unfold, one that tariffs, whether paused or permanent, cannot stop. Thank you for watching. We need your support to continue bringing you the latest news and analysis. Please give us your support, smash the like button, comment, share and subscribe to all. Click on the links below to view and purchase my book, which has accurately predicted these most important changes in human history and the world going forward. Thank you for your support.